Hi everyone, we're going to sketch the graph of this polynomial. I made a little mistake here. There's not supposed to be an x there, so this is just basically -1 there. So before we sketch, this is not in standard form, so let's fill out some information. To determine the degree, since it's not in standard form, we're just going to write our multiplicity of these factors here and add them up. So that's going to be 4. So our degree is 4. Now, the fact that we have our end behavior, the fact that this is an even number, and also that our lead coefficient is negative, it's going to determine our end behavior. And we'll talk about this shortly. Now, let's figure out our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is when x is 0. So you have negative, it's -1 times 3 times 1, and that equals 3. So we have 0, 3. Our zeros are when y is 0, so let that be 0. So for this factor, that would be 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. -3 plus 3 is 0. And -1 plus 1 is 0. So let's write our zeros down. 1, 0. -3, 0, and -1, 0. All right, our maximum turning points is you take your n here, which is 4, and subtract 1. So we have at most 3 turning points. And this last bit we're going to do after we graph. We're going to look and see where the graph is, f of x is negative, and where our y here is positive. So let's go back to end behavior. Just remember we have an even degree and our lead coefficient is negative. So we have an even degree and our lead coefficient is negative. This is the graph comparison, which gives us our end behavior. So in our case, our degree was 4. So if you look at y equals -x to the 4th, it looks just like this. The only difference is that it's flatter in here and shoots down quicker. But we don't really care about that. We just care about these end pieces right here. And that tells us as we graph from left to right that we're going to start in quadrant 3 and we're going to end in quadrant 1. And this is positive, negative. And all this states is that as x gets larger and larger from 0, our y gets smaller and smaller, our y values. And for this side of 0, the left side of 0, as x gets smaller and smaller in values, so do our y values. And if you look at this end behavior here, you see positive and a negative. Well, that just means that's quadrant 4. And right here you see 2 negatives. This is your x, this is really your y. And that is quadrant 3. So that tells you how we're going to graph. So let's graph this. We have a y-intercept at 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, we're going to start down quadrant 3 and end in quadrant 4. Let me plot my zeros at 1, -1, and -3. Now, these first two factors have multiplicity of 1, so let's go up and graph this. So we start down here in quadrant 3 and go to -3. So when you go to -3, since this is an odd multiplicity, we can cross. So we're going to cross up here, and we're not going to worry about our min and max, and we go to -1. Well, -1 is this portion, because -1 plus 1 is 0. It has a multiplicity of 2. That means it's an even number, and we cannot cross the x-axis. So we're going to go back, shoot back up, make a U-turn, and go through our y-intercept, and then go back down to 1. Now, 1, this is this portion, that's a multiplicity of 1, so we can cross. So there's our graph, and it's just the shape of the graph, and our end behaviors were right in here. We started in quadrant 3 and ended in quadrant 4. Now, next thing we need to do, we're going to write y equals 0 here. So what we're going to look at is where is y positive and where below the y equals 0 is y negative. So where f of x is positive is in this area. And you're looking at your interval from -3 to 1. All right? Now, where is our f of x negative? And that occurs below the y equals 0. And that's occurring from -infinity to -3. And from this part right in here, it's below the y equals 0. And that's from 1 to infinity. So 1 to infinity. And that's all. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.